Okay, welcome back to our reading of A Christmas Carol. Today we're going to be looking at the first extract from Stave 5. As always, I'll read the extract and then we'll look at some annotations, some analysis of key quotations afterwards. This is quite a nice short extract. Stave 5 is much shorter than any of the other staves, so we'll make quite quick progress today. Okay. Yes, and the bedpost was his own, the bed was his own, the room was his own, best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own to make amends in. I will live in the past, the present and the future, Scrooge repeated as he scrambled out of bed. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees. He was so fluttered and so glowing with his good intentions that his broken voice would scarcely answer to his call. He had been sobbing violently in his conflict with the spirit, and his face was wet with tears. They are not torn down, cried Scrooge, folding one of his bed curtains in his arms. They are not torn down, rings and all. They are here, I am here. The shadows of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be, I know they will. His hands were busy with his garments all this time, turning them inside out, putting them on upside down, tearing them, mislaying them, making them parties to every kind of extravagance. I don't know what to do, cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath and making a perfect Laocoon of himself with his stockings. I am as light as a feather, I am as happy as an angel, I am as merry as a schoolboy, I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody, a Happy New Year to all the world, hello here, whoop, hello. He had frisked into the living room and was now standing there, perfectly winded. There's the saucepan that the gruel was in, cried Scrooge, starting off again and going round the fireplace. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas Present sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right, it's all true, it all happened, ha ha! Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs. I don't know what day of the month it is, said Scrooge. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind, I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello, whoop, hello here. He was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clang, hammer, ding-dong, bell, bell-dong-ding, hammer, clang, clash. Oh, glorious, glorious. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, clear, bright, jovial, stirring, cold, piping for the blood to dance to. Golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. What's today? Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. Eh? Returned the boy with all his might of wonder. What's today, my fine fellow? Said Scrooge. Today, replied the boy. Why, Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day, said Scrooge to himself. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like, of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow. Hello, returned the boy. Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner? Scrooge inquired. I should hope I did, replied the lad. An intelligent boy, said Scrooge, a remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one. What, the one as big as me? Returned the boy. What a delightful boy, said Scrooge. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck. It's hanging there now, replied the boy. Is it? Said Scrooge. Go and buy it. Walker, exclaimed the boy. No, no, said Scrooge, I am in earnest. Go and buy it, and tell them to bring it here, that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown. The boy was off like a shot. He must have had a steady hand at a trigger who could have got a shot off half so fast. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's, whispered Scrooge, rubbing his hands and splitting with a laugh. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's will be. The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did, somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. As he stood there waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye. I shall love it as long as I live, cried Scrooge, patting it with his hand. I scarcely ever looked at it before. What an honest expression it has in its face. It's a wonderful knocker. Here's the turkey. Hello, whoop, how are you? Merry Christmas. It was a turkey. He could never have stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped them off short in a minute, like sticks of sealing wax. Why, "It's impossible to carry that to Camden Town," said Scrooge. "You must have a cab." The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again, and chuckled till he cried. Okay, so let's have a look at some annotations then for this extract. The first thing that I think is important to note is Scrooge's declaration of his intentions for his new life. So in these first few lines here, he declares his intention to live a purposeful and moral life, remembering all those lessons that he's been taught. He says, "I'll live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive, shall work within me." So he's reminding us that he's going to live his life in accordance with the lessons that the ghosts have taught him. In saying this, he praises the Christmas time. Heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. And this reminds us that Dickens presents Christmas specifically as a time of miracles and magic, a time when such changes are possible. He thanks Christmas for the changes that have been worked upon him. Furthermore, he thanks Marley, and he says, "I say it on my knees, old Jacob, on my knees." The fact that he thanks Marley on his knees, that gesture of going down on one's knees, symbolically evokes ideas of prayer, redemption, and it implies that Scrooge has a newly religious outlook on life as well. This reminds us of in Stave 4, when he's getting down on his knees in front of the ghost of Christmas yet to come. And now here he is, getting down on his knees again to pray forgiveness, to pray for thanks. All of these things suggest that he's starting to live a more Christian, a more moral life, and that these are going to be things that continue within him. We see as well his face is still wet with tears. There's that suggestion that these tears are almost becoming tears of gratitude now that he's seen he's alive. So he begins to get dressed and he says, "I'm as light as a feather, I'm as happy as an angel, I'm as merry as a schoolboy, I'm as giddy as a drunken man." And he starts talking about Merry Christmas to everyone. And I would just say, contrast these similes with the ones that Dickens uses to describe Scrooge in Stave 1. You think about, for example, "as solitary as an oyster," that famous quotation. Look at how different these are now. Look at what characteristics Dickens is emphasising here. Scrooge's lightness, his happiness, his merriness, his giddiness. None of these are words that we would have used to describe Stave 1 Scrooge. And look at the comparisons that are being made. He compares himself to an angel in his happiness, evoking his newfound sense of moral and spiritual purpose. He's begun to live his life in line with Christian principles. That word schoolboy creates a sense of innocence and childish playfulness, starkly contrasting Scrooge's Stave 1 persona. And the fact that he talks about himself as being like a schoolboy, and then in a moment he says he's like a baby, but he's happy to be like a baby. This suggests that he feels rejuvenated, as if this second chance of life has made him young again, and he's starting completely from scratch, as if he's new in the world. So there's that sense of rebirth, spiritual rebirth. He's starting again, and this time he's going to live his life in accordance with the lessons the ghosts have taught him. He's going to live a more moral, kinder, more generous life. As he continues, he starts delighting in all of the things that he can see in his house that tell him that the spirits have truly visited him, and he begins to laugh. And he laughs all the way through this extract, and we finish this little extract with more of his laughter. And I think that Dickens reiterating and emphasising and repeating the fact that Scrooge is laughing, it illustrates his genuine happiness. This is an emotion that he hasn't felt for a long time. He's truly happy and excited to begin his life anew. And the metaphor at the end of this little phrase here, "the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs," reveals to us that this is a happiness that's going to continue through the rest of Scrooge's life. This laugh is just the first of many, many to come. He makes this comment about "I'm quite a baby," talking about the idea of rejuvenation again. And then he hears the church bells ringing out, the lustiest peals he'd ever heard. So there's real energy and passion in the sound of these bells ringing. And I think Dickens here uses that imagery of the ringing church bells to remind us of Scrooge's changed ways. It's that connection to religion and ideas of the church, ideas of faith. The sound delights him because he's now choosing to live his life in a more Christian way. But by contrast, in Stave 1, he feels like that gruff old bell is always peeping slyly down at him, as though he feels like it's snooping on him. He's being watched as he's getting up to his sinful behaviours. So here, the sound of those church bells ringing has a very different emotion that it evokes for Scrooge. It's a much more positive sound. You might think as well, the sound of those bells ringing also reminds us of all the bells ringing just before Jacob Marley appears. You remember when all the bells in the house begin to ring? So we have that image, that motif of the ringing bells suggesting the passing of time. But at this point in the novel, time passing is celebratory. Scrooge no longer has to fear bells ringing and time passing because he's becoming a more moral person. He's not heading towards this awful future anymore. He's heading towards a much happier one. As he runs to the window, he opens it, he puts his head out, and it's a beautiful day. And again, you can draw out these contrasts between the way that the weather is used here, the way that the landscape is described, and the way that Dickens describes it at different points earlier in the novel, where the coldness is bitter and biting and miserable. Here, it's piping for the blood to dance to. So that cold air is just another thing to feel joyful about, another thing to be thankful for. The sunlight is golden, the sky is heavenly, and again Dickens's use of language there has religious connotations to it, doesn't it? Golden and heavenly, and those words are capitalised to suggest their importance. Every little aspect of the landscape is something that Scrooge feels thankful for. So his reaction to the world when he opens the window is joyful, because for the first time he recognises its beauty. It's been around him all the time, but he's never seen it before, he's never noticed it. He's like a man restored from death. It's like he's been brought back from the brink and now he's celebrating his new life. He sees every little thing as beautiful because he's thankful for the opportunity to see it. And we have this repetition of, oh, glorious, glorious. And again, that's a word with religious connotations, that glory of God. So he's thankful for everything that he sees. We have the conversation then with the young boy dressed in Sunday clothes who has been summoned by Scrooge to go and buy this gigantic turkey from the poulterers. And as he's talking to this young boy, Scrooge repeats, an intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. He's polite. He says, yes, my buck, yes, my fine fellow. He's polite, he's friendly when he's talking to this young boy. And, I mean, just compare this with some of the other interactions we've seen Scrooge have over the course of this novel. This is a much more positive one. I've got 2 points here. One of them I think is really important to understand. One of them is a connection to another point in the novel that I think is an interesting one as well. So Dickens uses Scrooge's speech here to show us how much his attitudes towards the working classes have changed. He sees the boy as intelligent and delightful, and just contrast that with the way he treats the choir boy back in Stave 1, where he's like waving the ruler at him like he's going to throw it if he doesn't stop singing. So at this point in the novel, he's got a newfound respect for people, regardless of their social status. He appreciates children, and we might say that this has something to do with his seeing seeing ignorance and want in that terrifying scene in Stave 4. We might also think it's part of his newfound respect for all people. It reminds me in particular of that comment of Fred's back in Stave 1, where he talks about all of the things that Christmas is good for, and in particular he says Christmas helps people to think of people below them as if they were really fellow passengers to the grave. And this young boy is most likely a working class boy, sort of below Scrooge in the social hierarchy. But Scrooge now sees everyone as a fellow passenger to the grave. He sees everyone as equal because he recognises their shared humanity. So he has respect for everyone now because of what the ghosts have taught him. And we can see that in the way that he chooses to talk to the boy. So Scrooge sends him to go and buy this gigantic turkey, and he says he's going to send it to Bob Cratchit's, but he's not going to put a note on it with his name, he's going to send it anonymously, and the thought of this delights him, and he's splitting with laugh. So he's bursting out laughing even as he's thinking about what he's going to do. And the fact that Scrooge chooses to be anonymous, I think, suggests he doesn't want any thanks for this act. He does it purely out of the joy of doing it. He really takes childish delight in the gesture. And the idea that he's doing something sort of slightly sneaky, but he's doing it for all these positive reasons. He's doing it out of playfulness and that playful generosity as well. And it's a generosity that doesn't want recognition. He's not being generous because he wants to be thanked for how good and how charitable he is. He's being generous because he knows it's the right thing to do. And that, I think, is Dickens again pointing out some of the hypocrisies of the Victorian era. People were continually looking for ways in which they could be charitable, but being charitable was also a way of raising your own social status. By being visibly and publicly generous, you made yourself look good. Scrooge doesn't want to have this symbol, have this generous gesture that he's doing to Bob be thought of as something that he's doing to raise his own status. He does it because he wants to do something nice for someone he knows. Sorry, rambled a bit there. As we continue, Scrooge sees the door knocker again, the one that transformed into Marley's face back in the beginning of the novel. And then the turkey arrives, and he immediately says to the poulterer's man, the delivery man, he says it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town, which is where Bob Cratchit lives. He says you must have a cab. So not only has he paid for the biggest turkey in the window, not only has he tipped the boy for going to buy it, but he's laughing to himself as he pays for the turkey, he pays for the taxi for it to be delivered, he pays the boy for his efforts. All of these things just bring him joy because he laughs the whole time. And Dickens's repetition of that word chuckle here emphasises Scrooge's delight in the positive actions he is taking. As he spends his wealth on improving the lives of other people, he becomes happier and more positive in his outlook. He too is improved. So the act of generosity brings him joy. For the first time in his life, he's experiencing that side of Christmas, that there is more joy in giving something than in receiving it. Okay, in our next extract, we'll be finishing off the novel, so I will see you then. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.